Her upward curve continues. Another big win. Another big performance from Alex EALA.
Washington, August 2nd. The sky turns dark without warning. A few seconds later, rain crashes onto the hard court, forcing players to sprint toward the tunnel while thousands of fans remain frozen in their seat. The scoreboard doesn't change. Jessica Pegula is still one set away from the title. Alex EALA has finally started to fight her way back. Then, in the middle of the silence, a voice echoes across the nearly empty stadium. Not English. Spanish? Louder, harder. Keep pushing. The television microphones barely catch it, but people watching the live broadcast immediately begin asking the same question. Who is talking to Alex EALA? What almost nobody realized at that moment was that these weren't emotional words meant to lift her confidence. They were the final reminders of a strategy that had been quietly taking shape for months. A plan that started long before Washington, long before the cameras focused on her, long before the tennis world suddenly began calling her one of the sport's fastest rising stars. That rain delay didn't interrupt Alex EALA's biggest match. It accidentally revealed the work happening behind it. And once you understand what her team has been building since the beginning of the season, you'll never watch her game the same way again. Because this wasn't simply another surprise run. It was proof that one of the most overlooked players on the Tar Tour had quietly transformed herself into someone capable of challenging the very best in the world. Let's rewind. When the DC Open began, very few people expected Alex EALA to be standing in the championship match by the end of the week. Yes, tennis insiders respected her talent. Yes, fans in the Philippines believed she could upset top players. But winning a WTA 500 event meant surviving one of the toughest draws of the entire hard-court swing. It meant defeating experienced champions who had spent years competing on the biggest stages in tennis. Most young players dream about that challenge. Alex EALA walked straight into it. Her journey started with confidence, but each round became noticeably more difficult. Instead of fading under the pressure, she seemed to grow stronger every single match. Every victory added another layer of belief, not only inside her own camp, but throughout the tournament. Soon, spectators who had arrived to support higher-ranked stars found themselves watching the young Filipina with increasing curiosity. Who was this player taking the ball so early? Why did every rally suddenly seem faster whenever she stepped inside the baseline? And perhaps the biggest question of all, how was she making some of the world's most accomplished players look uncomfortable? By the time the quarterfinals arrived, people could no longer dismiss her run as luck. She defeated Olympic champion Zheng Qinwen with fearless aggression. Then came another enormous test against former US Open finalist Leylah Fernandez. It became one of the toughest matches of her tournament, forcing EALA to dig deeper than ever before. Momentum swung back and forth, but every time the pressure increased, she responded with even greater conviction. That victory changed something, not just on the scoreboard. Inside the stadium, fans who had entered as neutral observers slowly began cheering for her between nearly every point. Energy spread through the crowd as if everyone sensed they were witnessing the beginning of something special. And Alex wasn't finished. Standing between her and the final was one of the biggest names in women's tennis, Naomi Osaka, a four-time Grand Slam champion, one of the most recognizable athletes in the sport. For many young players, facing Osaka on a major stage can feel overwhelming before the first ball is even struck. Alex EALA looked anything but intimidating. From the opening games, she dictated the tempo instead of reacting to it. She stepped inside the court, robbed Osaka of valuable time, and forced the former world #1 into uncomfortable positions over and over again. The rallies weren't simply being won. They were being controlled. It was the kind of fearless tennis usually expected from established champions, not someone still introducing herself to much of the international audience. As the match progressed, the crowd began to realize something remarkable. This wasn't an upset fueled by emotion. This was a masterclass built on preparation. Every aggressive return, every early strike, every perfectly timed change of direction seemed connected to a larger plan. When the final point landed, Alex EALA had defeated another global star with without looking overwhelmed by the occasion. Suddenly, headlines around the tennis world all carried the same message. The Filipina sensation was through to her first WTA 500 final. But while millions celebrated the achievement, the people inside her coaching team weren't acting surprised, because they believed this moment had been coming for a long time. And what happened next would prove that reaching the final was never the real objective. It was only the beginning of a much bigger story. The biggest surprise wasn't that Alex EALA had reached the final. It was the way she got there. She wasn't surviving matches by hoping her opponents made mistakes. She was forcing those mistakes. Every round revealed the same pattern. Alex refused to let her opponents settle into their rhythm. Instead of standing several feet behind the baseline waiting for rallies to develop, she stepped forward, took the ball early, and stole precious time from some of the best players in the world. That approach sounds simple. Executing it against elite professionals is anything but. When a player consistently takes the ball early, every decision has to be made in a split second. Footwork must be perfect. Timing has to be almost flawless. One small hesitation is enough to lose control of the rally. Yet throughout the week in Washington, Alex kept making it look natural. Her confidence wasn't built on risky shot making, it was built on preparation. This is exactly what caught the attention of respected coach Rick Machi, a man whose eye for talent has earned worldwide respect after working with some of the greatest players in history. Watching Alex's run, Machi pointed to something many casual fans were missing. He wasn't talking about emotion. He wasn't talking about momentum. He was talking about mechanics. According to him, Alex's biggest strength is her ability to take time away from opponents. She attacks the ball early, cuts off angles before they fully develop, and forces rivals to play under constant pressure. That might not sound dramatic, but inside professional tennis, it's one of the highest compliments a player can receive, because champions don't simply hit harder. They make everyone else feel rushed. Against Naomi Osaka, that philosophy became impossible to ignore. From the opening set, Alex repeatedly stepped inside the baseline, redirecting the ball before Osaka had enough time to recover her position. Instead of allowing long exchanges where power could dominate, she shortened points through intelligent positioning and fearless timing. The scoreboard reflected that control, but numbers only tell part of the story. What truly stood out was Osaka's body language. She wasn't losing because she lacked power. She was losing because Alex refused to give her enough time to use it. That difference separates good players from dangerous ones, and suddenly, opponents around the tour had something new to think about whenever Alex EALA appeared across the net. But here's where the story becomes even more interesting, because despite everything she accomplished in Washington, despite defeating Grand Slam champions, despite reaching the biggest final of her career, her own coaching team still believed her game wasn't complete. Think about that for a moment. Most players would celebrate a breakthrough week by focusing on everything that went right. Alex's team was already looking at what still needed to improve, and that mindset may be the biggest reason why her rise feels different from so many breakout stories we've seen before. Every elite athlete eventually reaches a point where improvement becomes harder to find. The obvious weaknesses disappear. What's left are the small details, tiny adjustments that can completely change a career. For Alex, that detail has become impossible to ignore: her serve. Throughout this remarkable season, she has built victories through relentless returning, exceptional court awareness, and fearless baseline aggression. Those qualities carried her through Birmingham. They helped her shine in Berlin. They pushed her deeper into Wimbledon. And now they had carried her all the way into the championship match in Washington. But the higher you climb, the smaller the margins become. Against the world's very best, every free point matters. Every easy hold matters. Every first serve can decide an entire set. That's why experienced coaches weren't simply celebrating Alex's incredible shot-making. They were already imagining what could happen if one final piece of her game reached the same level as everything else. Because if that happens, the conversation surrounding Alex EALA changes completely. She stops being viewed as a dangerous young player capable of upsetting top seeds. She becomes someone expected to challenge for the biggest titles in tennis. And that possibility is exactly why the rain delay in Washington mattered far more than most people people realized. While millions of viewers saw a match temporarily interrupted by bad weather, her coaching team saw one final opportunity, one more chance to reinforce months of work, one more reminder of the aggressive identity they had spent the entire season building. Those instructions echoing from the coaching box weren't random. They were the foundation of everything Alex had become. But when play resumed, there would be nowhere left to hide. Only one question remained. Could the game that carried her through 4 elite opponents also carry her through the biggest moment of her career? Because champions aren't remembered for reaching finals. They're remembered for what they do when history is waiting on the other side of the net. History has a strange way of testing players at the exact moment they believe they're ready. For Alex EALA, that test wasn't just Jessica Pegula. It wasn't the rain. It wasn't even the pressure of playing for the biggest title of her professional career. It was whether the identity she had spent months building could survive the biggest spotlight she had ever faced. Because by the time the final reached its decisive moments, one thing had become undeniable. This wasn't the same player the tour had seen earlier in the season. She moved with greater purpose. She attacked with greater conviction. And perhaps most importantly, she no longer looked like someone hoping to belong among the elite. She played like someone expecting to. That shift is difficult to measure with statistics. You won't find it in ace totals or winner count. But every great champion eventually develops it. The belief that no opponent is untouchable. The confidence to trust your game even when the pressure reaches its highest point. For years, the Philippines waited for a player capable of consistently challenging the biggest names in world tennis. Now that player wasn't just competing, she was changing expectation. Around the tennis world, analysts were no longer asking whether Alex EALA belonged on this stage. They were asking how high she could climb from here. That's an entirely different conversation, because reaching one final can be a breakthrough. Repeating performances like this turns a breakthrough into a career trajectory. And that's why the next chapter may be even more important than the one we've just witnessed. Every young star eventually reaches a crossroads. One path leads to memorable moments. The other leads to lasting greatness. The difference is rarely talent. It's the willingness to improve, even after proving everyone wrong. For Alex, that next challenge is becoming increasingly clear. Her aggressive baseline game has already earned the respect of elite players. Her return game has shown it can pressure some of the strongest servers on tour. Her movement allows her to extend rallies that many players would lose. But if her serve continues to evolve alongside the rest of her game, the ceiling becomes dramatically higher. Imagine giving opponents even fewer opportunities to attack. Imagine starting more service games with free point instead of immediately entering long rally. Imagine combining that improvement with the fearless style we've already seen throughout this remarkable season. That's when deep tournament runs begin turning into championship runs. That's when quarterfinal appearances become semifinals. Semifinals become finals, and finals begin ending with trophies. Maybe that's why the voices from her coaching box carried so much meaning during that unforgettable rain delay. Those words weren't simply about winning one more point. They reflected months of discipline, repetition, and belief. Every early practice session, every adjustment, every difficult conversation, every lesson learned after painful defeat. All of it was leading toward moments exactly like this. Whether Alex lifted the trophy that day or not, something much bigger had already happened. The rest of the tennis world finally caught up to what her team had believed all along. She wasn't arriving by accident. She was arriving by design. And perhaps that's the most exciting part of this entire story. She's still only at the beginning. There are bigger tournaments ahead, more Grand Slam, more battles against the world's best, more opportunities to prove that this wasn't a single magical week, but the foundation of a career capable of inspiring an entire generation. The journey from promising prospect to genuine contender is never completed overnight. It's built one match at a time, one lesson at a time, one challenge at a time. Washington may eventually be remembered as the tournament where Alex EALA announced herself to the world, but it may also be remembered for something even greater. The moment people stopped asking if she could compete with the best and started wondering when she would become one of them. So now the question belongs to you. Do you believe this incredible run is only the beginning of Alex EALA's rise? Can she break into the WTA top 20 before the season ends? fans? Or do you think an even bigger breakthrough is waiting just around the corner? Share your prediction in the comments below. I want to hear what you think. And if you enjoy in-depth tennis stories that go beyond the headlines, revealing the strategy, the coaching decisions, and the hidden details that most fans never get to see, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Because if Washington was only the opening chapter, you won't want to miss what Alex EALA writes next.